What's up everybody, my name's Ants and I'm a digital artist working in the video game and film industry. I am going to be making a series of videos that go through my design process as well as what it takes to put an animation together. So I'm going to be talking about backgrounds, concept art, design pieces, animating in Toon Boom, and using Photoshop to make all my assets as we move forward. So please jump on ahead, take a few pointers and let's get to it. Okay, so let's get into drawing. So what I've got here is a Photoshop file. I'm working on a side shot of this concept that I've been working on for a while. And I'm going to be doing this in a way that allows me to lead into further shots in the future. But I'm going to be breaking this into a whole bunch of different elements to figure out, so I can take that into Toon Boom and start to put it on pegs and start to change the speed of which they move in the camera, so to provide a bit of depth. So with this one here, I'm actually going to need to figure out a background from scratch, but I've already got a bit of a set in mind with how it kind of operates. So I'm going to be working towards like a night scene that's kind of like this. So I need to take some of those shapes and colors and everything like that into consideration as I do the background. So what I'm going to do just to get started is I'm going to make a new layer and I'm just going to start sketching. So I'm making sure that if I go up to Windows and I've got brushes, I can start to choose which brush I'm going to use. So I'm actually going to use a hard round brush, but I don't want it to be like a big thick texture. So I'm going to put on shape dynamics and make sure I've got pen pressure on. And you can see how we've got a tapered edge now in that stroke, which means that when I put this pen to paper, it starts to feel a little bit more like a pencil. I can even make it feel more like a pencil by putting on this here, which adds even more like pen pressure. So the harder I push, the thicker the line and the harder the stroke. And that really feels like a pencil. So that's great by me. So what I'm actually going to do is just block out a few bits and pieces. So I know that there's going to be a person off screen left, and I know that it's kind of like ruins. So I'm just going to like block in a few like shapes of ruins and blocks. But what I'm going to do quickly actually is jump onto Google and write in stony ruins, because reference is your friend and you should always try and capture reference. So I'm just going to quickly bring this across, copy, and let's just delete that because we didn't actually get that far, and paste. Cool. So we've got ourselves this kind of shape here. So what I'm looking at here when I'm looking for reference is like the overall shape. So we've got like it's like a big kind of a square shape. But look at all these kind of like jagged bits and everything. That's the kind of stuff that I'm after. So I'm actually going to bring that over to here because that's going to be hidden anyway. But I'm going to use these kind of shapes to help me kind of block in some interesting areas that we can start to bring in here. And realistically, with this image, I'm actually going to like blur the hell out of it. So I'm just going to get a few of these kind of shots in there just to kind of block it in. I want to get some just the big broad shapes, because this again is going to be really actually blocked out, really blurred out later on. So I'm just going to get in here and start to get a little bit of depth going. And in my shot, this snake head doesn't actually come further in this way. It literally just comes up and down. But I do need to take into consideration some of the elements that come in behind it, just because that way I'm able to, I might put a spear or something in there, so give it a bit more shape language, break up some of these shapes a little bit. So we'll look back at our reference. They got this like kind of cool texture going there, so I'll grab a bit of that. I'm just gonna draw it just literally scribble it in, to be honest. Like, just kind of rough it in and get these rough shapes going. And I can just remember what they are simply by either looking back at our reference or, you can see this is a bit too much. I try not to erase too much when I'm in this phase. Just try and let it go loosey-goosey, let it all roll through. And I can figure the rest, like all the important stuff out later on. Just kind of block it out to get that composition going, the overall look of how this works. So if I turn that off, when in the background, when it's moving, I'll probably make it a bit bigger when it's taken into Toon Boom. And then this will move nice and slowly at a rate that's not as fast as this one. And then all of a sudden it will feel like it's, this will feel like it's a bit closer to the camera. So we're going to trick the eye into working in a way that benefits the shot. But for the background, that's all I need to do for now. Just simple yucky lines. So I've actually spent a bit of time designing this sheet already. So I might be able to quickly show you on the side here. I'll do a character design or asset design page in the future. But for now, I'll quickly show you what we've got to work with here. So this is an asset from a game that I've designed. A game that I'm making with some mates. And we're doing this here. So this is going to be the God of Justice. It's going to be our one of our towers in our tower defense game. So I designed that a while ago, but that's going to be what I'm kind of working off of. So you may have seen another video that's got a close-up of it looking front on. So this one here is going to be side on. And then when I animate it, I'm going to have a bunch of beautiful rain droplets that are going to be hitting the face. So what I'm doing now is I'm actually going to get into the final lineup for this image here. I've got a bit of this darkness there that I'm going to take off, and I might actually use that later, so I'm going to bring that up the top. I like to keep my bookkeeping pretty straightforward, just because I know that I'm going to have to export this work later on. So the way that I'm going to go ahead and do this is go Command or Control G and put this into a group, and then double click this, and I'll call this snake head. Happy days. Cool. And then I'll do another group inside that group, and I'm going to double click and call this line. It's going to be important for later on, and I'll show you why. So I've got my pencil the way that I want it. Beautiful. I'm going to be drawing it just with black. I'm going to make sure that my the size of my brush is where I want it, which is to 5 pixels. That's just to be consistent with the rest of my image. And now I'm just going to literally draw over the work that I've done previously, just to get a bit of a nicer look. And I know that I've done quite a nice drawing with this one, but if I open this up, you can see I did it on a lower resolution. So I did this before I knew I was going to be making a 4K trailer, so now I need to make it for a 4K resolution, which is totally fine. But what that means is I need to redraw it, and I want to repaint it, and I want to do a little bit of a nicer paint job as well. So that's okay. So what I'm going to do is now turn this down, and that's the whole purpose of doing these like asset sheets. Is it helps provide an understanding of the type of work that might need to be used in the future. If I had got this this asset sheet done beforehand, I wouldn't have really considered this to be a thing, and it would have taken like a bit longer for me to design new assets as I go. So this was originally designed as a 2D asset sheet that was then used by a 3D artist to turn into a 3D asset, so then we can introduce it into our video game. The video game is going to be called Blood Vow Survive the Night. So coming together quite well. So what I'm doing now is I'm just literally drawing. I've got a Wacom tablet. I'm using Photoshop. So all of the tips and tricks that I provide for this video are going to be based for Photoshop. But you can also use other free alternatives. There's like Clip Studio Paint, I believe might be free, and there's like Krita, each being quite good for their own right. I like to use Photoshop because I have been drawing in Photoshop for a very long time, but it's not the be-all to end-all. So if you are learning to draw, or you've been drawing for a long time, then I think getting into Photoshop eventually would be a really good kind of thing, but it's not the only way to do it. So do whatever makes you happy. Do whatever makes good pictures. That's all I really care about. So I'm just going to be scribbling along and giving a few tips as I progress. So I've actually zoomed in here. I've got a MacBook that I'm working off of, so I'm like pinching and pulling the this screen as I like my touchpad as I'm moving around. And I've actually got you push spacebar to move this like the canvas around when you've zoomed in. But I actually have mapped my spacebar to the button of my Wacom tablet. So when I'm in this much, I'm literally just holding down that button. A bit like clockwork, and just like pulling it and pushing it whenever I need to. And then like always like kind of pulling it back out to see how it looks as an overall image, and then back in to see how we go, and keep on working. And as you get a bit more comfortable with drawing, you'll be able to kind of have a bit of instinct in regards to like your line weight. You might notice that like sometimes I'm doing really thin lines and sometimes I'm doing a bit thicker lines. I'm doing that deliberately. I'm not really leaving anything to chance with this. Like I've got a pretty informed approach that I'm trying to do. So I use like light and thin lines and thick lines deliberately to when I need to use them, and it could be to like suggest that there's a bit of depth to an area, bit of form. You might also do it to overlap certain areas. So I'm going to do it like a bit darker here because I'm going to have this fang later on, and I want that fang to feel like it's behind the lip of this of the snake here, and I do that by doing a thicker line, and that's called line weight. So it's a nice little trick that a lot of great artists use, and I saw it in like a lot of my influences. So I've just tried my best to kind of apply it to my own practice as well. And I always do that. So I always recommend that you like look at other people's work. Like why do you like certain artists' work? It's a really good question to ask yourself, because as you teach yourself to ask these questions, you're forcing yourself to critically analyze someone's work, identifying things like line weight and understanding like why an artist might do a particular thing will help you understand why that might make their images so appealing and why you might like it. Then you can take those lessons and apply it to your own work. And if you do that with enough artists, and all of a sudden you're not copying other people's work, but instead what you're doing is you're going to be taking lessons from multiple places that inform your own approach to doing work, which then results in your own style. And that's where you start to like make some magic, because you're not only just taking from one place, you're taking from multiple places, and that becomes research at that point. So I remember there's a great artist called Kevin Chen who taught me in my first year of art school, and he said, if you take from one place, that's plagiarism, but if you take from multiple places, then that's research. And it kind of stuck with me. So definitely like start looking at people's work that you like, and just like truly ask yourself like, why do I like this? What do I like about it the most? And I think if you keep doing that, you're on the road to doing some pretty amazing work, or at least you're on the way to approaching your own style, so you can have your own flavor. Because who knows, someone might be looking at your work in the future and be like, do you know what? I love the way that they have captured the light, or they use the colors, or they draw form, or whatever it is that you do. Me, I'm a drawer. I love to draw, so I stick to that, and I use that as my kind of backbone for all of my pieces. And that's why I spend, like, for me, you might not spend this much time in the drawing phase, but I spend like the majority of my time drawing, because it's going to inform like where I'm going to put colors, where I'm going to put, how I'm going to render it. If it looks good as a drawing, I know that I can make it look good as like a painting. And you know, it's just my strong suit. So I've identified that, and I've really lent into doing that as a practice. So whenever I'm doing any work, I just know that, you know, I just need to draw it out, and if I can make it make sense as a drawing, then I can make it make sense as a painting. But that's just my own approach. If drawing isn't your way, then, you know, find your way. But the way that you find that is through practice and through repetition. So you need to get your reps in. It's like working out. You just need to get your reps in, and you get stronger instead of your muscles growing. It's your skill set. You're going to level them up over time. And it doesn't happen by sitting back and not drawing. The only way to get good at drawing is by drawing. So hopefully, if you're watching this, you're drawing. And you're just having me on the side, or you're not at all, and that's fine. You know, sometimes it's also good to not draw and just have a chill out. But ultimately, you need to get that pencil moving, and you know the only way that you're going to improve those skills is by moving the pencil around. So if you're not drawing, take a rest and get drawing tomorrow or in an hour or whenever. Set a timer and get back to it. Get back in that horse. Trust me. It's the best way to do it, and you'll feel good. If you're learning, you know, you're maybe you might be in like first year of art school, or you're a high school student and you're interested in drawing, then like this is a great kind of way to just learn how to put a piece together. I'll go and talk about other like design approaches as I start to make more videos, but you know, sometimes the best way to kind of get started is to have an idea. And to have an idea, you might kind of be trying to do some character designs, or you might be trying to kind of make up some environment pieces or design a vehicle. But if you don't have like a brief down, then you can kind of run around in circles. So this character that we've got here is actually like the god of justice, and this came about from one, we had a mechanic that needed to be have a certain item made for it, but then we had like a narrative person come up with a brief for me, and that brief was then used to inform the design choices that were going to be made. So we had the game design as well as like the attack method that it was going to be doing, so the mechanics, as well as narrative design to start to inform the what this creature was going to be. And now it's like a big eyeball that's coming out from a snake's head, which, you know, it also has that rule of cool. I think that's pretty gnarly. But yeah, as a result, we've got this disgusting kind of scary creature. And I'm thinking about like, you know, just repetition and shapes. Like this here was done essentially, all these scales I'm going to get into in a moment. It's kind of like, you know, if we were to have a cylinder, or just like, let's just say that this is a cylinder. I've got these kind of shapes, and then I did them by just kept them more like this, and like this. That's essentially it, as like a real like rough approach. And then as it wraps around or whatever, you keep that kind of understanding there. But when you do those rough ones, then all of a sudden you can drop your opacity down here and make a new layer on top of it. And then you can say like, all right, cool. Well, like there's my shape there. There's the shape of my scale. And then I can use my, you know, break away from the mold that was that line there, and all of a sudden you've got yourself a pretty solid set of scales, and that's pretty much what I did as a like fundamental look of it. So right now I'm only using a few tools, but I'm using like E for eraser and B for brush. Command plus and minus, or pinching that touchpad to zoom in and out. Spacebar to move around. And that's pretty much it for now. But there's a whole lot of other tools at my disposal. Like before, I was dropping the opacity down, like so. And I often do that when I'm not doing final line art, but it's how I've got this whole group over here. I just drop the opacity so it becomes a little bit like tracing paper, and I'm just tracing over my own work and refining where those final lines go. But these tricks are like really handy. But you can see, like, even at this point, I'm only using a few tools, so it's not too complex. But the underdrawing and that planning that I did before coming into this is what I'm really glad that I spent time doing. That asset list that I showed earlier on, that didn't come quick. That didn't come like easy. That was quite a bit of work that I did in that. So, but as a result, I have that asset at my disposal, and now I'm working on doing this final line art. That's Control Z to backspace, by the way. I'm sure that you know that one already, but if you don't, Control Z. So yeah, I'm using that now as a background, like to support my background, and I'm going to spend about maybe, I don't know, 3, maybe 4 hours like painting this whole thing together, exporting it, and then maybe another like 3 or 4 hours animating that rain on top of it, all for about 4 seconds of screen time. But that's pretty crazy time, I guess. But that's just what it takes to make work like this. If I'm going to be, if I was to be in a studio environment, it'd be a bit different. I'd be working with a team to do this. For this one here, I'm going to be animating this and painting it solo. So from start to finish, from design to animation to export, that will be me. The only thing I won't be doing in this one will be like the sound design and the music. They're going to be done by some pretty cool people, I reckon. So we'll make that look and sound really good, because in animation, nothing will make my work look better or worse than good sound and music. It is it's a critical component to animation. So yeah, I honestly believe that it's such a valuable piece. So you can see, like, sometimes I come and draw in, and draw these kind of abstract lines, and I'll draw, you see, like this kind of zigzag shape that I've got here, and I kind of come around in here, and I just jot these areas in. What I'm doing, I'm using that to support the idea that there is like an edge there, or its form. And I don't do it everywhere, because if I do it everywhere and I do it consistently, then all of a sudden it feels like if I'm like this, right, and I've got a let's say I've got a square or like a rectangle, and bring it down and do another one. That's it has a bit of form to it already. But if I remove this, and if I just erase a little bit of this, and I use a bit of like I just chuck a few kind of lines in there, and maybe I'll erase little nooks and get rid of this. All of a sudden my cube starts to get a little bit more character to it, and then you can start to draw in some details, and all of a sudden it's wood, and just by having these kind of breaks in the line, and I'm doing a few suggested areas here, it starts to give it a bit of character. Then all of a sudden it's not just like a boring old rectangle, it's a stylized piece of wood. Alright, so another tool that I'm using now, because I just did this on the same line as of everything else. I'm using the lasso tool, which is L for lasso, and that just means I can draw and I can select areas that I want to delete without deleting everything else. And then to get rid of that selection, I'm going Command or Control D. Not doing too many little tricks just yet, but they will come in time, I mean. So yeah, I'm just going in there, and I'm just being very selective with how I do it. I sometimes use those like little marks to remind myself of areas to paint. So it means that like I might have a lip of light there, or I might use it to inform some shadows underneath. But I'm using that line weight again here because this part starts to then become engulfed by this looping snake body snake bit. So what I like about this like kind of character is the repetition of shapes is actually really like tricky to do. If you get into the right rhythm, you're able to kind of get the same shape and form and have it grow larger and smaller as you require it to be. But that's also like a bit of a drawing skill that you can use. So as you're getting warm, as I warm up sometimes, or I used to do it more so than I do now, I'll just like make a new like a new Photoshop layer just to warm up and just literally draw lines like this. Like I'm not holding down Shift here. I'm just using my my freehand just to kind of draw similar lines with line weight and right pressure. And I do that. That's allowed me to kind of like grow a really like direct hand when drawing. But when I was first starting, it was all over the shop. Like I could barely do anything. So it's okay. Like if that's where you're at, that's where you're at. Best way to get there is to keep on drawing. It's gonna always be my my suggestion. Is always going to be well, how much have you drawn this week? And sometimes you just don't have the time, and that's cool. But you should definitely try and make time to draw. If you love it and you want to get better, you have to make time. Even I draw all the time for work and for my own stuff, and sometimes even I'm like far out. I haven't had any time to draw this week, so I make time because otherwise I feel like I'm falling behind, or I'm not improving, or I'm not creating, and that doesn't gel well with me. So I always just need to be making something. It's like just a personal thing of mine. So yeah, I got my hand on my on either Command Z or Control Z, or the space bar, or Command minus and plus to come in and out constantly, because I'm not gonna have perfect lines all the time. Although at this point, I'm very rarely pushing Command Z, I'm doing it. I'm more so just coming in and out just to see how it's faring. So that's kind of where I'm at currently. So I might continue this one as a time lapse as we move ahead with this guy, and I'll stop again when it comes time to block it in and to paint it, and that will be in the next video. So we'll see you then, guys. Tune in for part 2.